As far as One Piece's live-action adaptation went, it was better than expected. For people that are unfamiliar to One Piece as a series, the general vibe was that it was actually quite good. The sets look great, the character designs are adapted well enough. Overall, it's a good time. However, I had some issues. I'm a long-time One Piece reader. I've reread the series half a dozen times. I really, truly love it. So there are some things that I noticed that I have to get off my chest. So that's what I'm going to do. There's some story problems and a fair few character differences. Right now they're just little cracks, but in a story as well realized as One Piece, these small cracks can grow into giant ravines if left unfilled. I'll be trying to keep this spoiler-free, predominantly covering only the manga arcs covered by the live-action adaptation, with spoiler-free references to later chapters. So let's get down to it. Issue 1. Luffy does not sneak. Of all the characters in the live action, Luffy was actually pretty great, with a couple of exceptions. Luffy is not a sneaky boy. Luffy, with all his battle intelligence and emotional intelligence, is a meaty meathead, straightforward, goofy little guy who states things as they are and thinks the best path is the most adventurous for the big things and the most direct for the small ones. While I was a bit put off that Luffy didn't burst out of a barrel, that didn't bother me as much as him sneaking about Alvida's ship to steal a lifeboat. Luffy doesn't have that sort of mindset. Take Manga Luffy, who completely fails to read the room upon meeting Alvida and calls her ugly to her face. Luffy would not sneak via a sewer to talk to Zoro. He would, and does, bold as anything, climb the fence and talk to him face to face. Because that's what Luffy does. Speaking of which, Issue 2. Luffy cares less about strength than he does about character. Luffy doesn't want to recruit Zoro because he's a strong, cool dude. He wants to recruit him because he's a good guy beneath his tough exterior. While the bar fight is great in the live action, Luffy shouldn't see Zoro's skills before asking him to join his crew. In the manga, it's only after seeing how he eats the food given to him by the little girl, even after it's been crushed into the dirt, that Luffy asks Zoro to join. Sure, he's heard of Zoro's skill, but he literally says he'll try and recruit him if he's a good guy. Same with Nami. In the manga, he initially doesn't want to team up with her. Only after hearing that she doesn't rob the villagers, only the pirates, and that she's a navigator, which he needs, does he ask her to join. He then retracts that when she double-crosses him, but once again affirms that she is our new navigator after Nami not just refuses to kill him, but puts out the fuse of a cannon about to fire at him with her bare hands. It's Usopp protecting his village, Sanji feeding a starving stranger. I can only think of one semi-exception to this, which I won't spoil, but Luffy is all about the quality of the individuals and their morality, not how hard they can hit things. Speaking of which, let's move on to Zoro. Issue 3. Zoro is a man of his word, and is loyal. Zoro is another character done pretty well, though he's a bit more stoic and aloof than his manga counterpart. Though one specific line that bugs the hell out of me is "not a crew." What are you saying, my guy, my dude, my three-sword-wielding, alcohol-chugging, weight-lifting fella? It is imperative that as soon as Zoro joins the crew, more or less blackmailed into it by Luffy, that as long as Luffy doesn't stand in the way of his dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, Luffy is his captain and he is loyal to his captain. It's just straight up wrong that Zoro is only half committed up until later on in the live action. Because, yeah, why would Zoro stick with Luffy, worry about him being in danger? If Zoro is still playing the role of Pirate Hunter Zoro and not Straw Hat crew member Zoro, his character is downgraded from man of his word, fiercely loyal and dedicated to what he swears to, down to stoic man who's actually a nice guy underneath. Which is a fine trope with other characters, but it's not Zoro. Zoro's word is the most important thing to him. His pledge to Kuina that he will become the greatest, his pledge to Luffy to become part of his crew, and his second pledge that he will never lose again. Speaking of which, Issue 4. Zoro would never go easy against Mihawk. This is a minor one, and I understand why it happened, but Why does Zoro only use 2 swords in his fight against Mihawk, at least until the very end? Like, I get it, 3 swords in reality is incredibly impractical. Trying to choreograph a fight scene using 3 swords will look far more awkward than it does look cool. That being said, it implies that Zoro, against the greatest swordsman in the world, did not use his full strength at the beginning of the fight. And Zoro wouldn't ever do that against the best in the world. Though about Mihawk... Issue 5. Mihawk is hilariously petty and doesn't follow orders. Hawkeye's Mihawk has reached the pinnacle, the strongest swordsman in the world. Using his incredible power, he does whatever he wants for the giggles. Seriously, as much fun as it was seeing Don Krieg, arguably One Piece's worst arc villain, more or less decimated off screen, the context around it misses something about Mihawk's character. While the world government technically has the authority to command Mihawk to do things, like hell he would follow a command as boring as, "Take in this bountiless pirate alive for me." Though, arguably he may respect the strength of Garp enough to be curious enough to check Luffy out in the context of the live-action series, but I digress. The one and only time we see him even giving the illusion of following orders in the manga is because something about the order piques his interest. No. In the manga, Mihawk decimates Don Krieg's 50-ship armada for one reason only. For fun. He's so bored being strong, with no one worth fighting, that he has been reduced to tormenting these pirates from the Grand Line to the East Blue. It is only when encountering Zoro that Mihawk sees an investment opportunity, a hope for someone that will make his life far less boring, even if he has to wait a while. And he only determines this decision not through Zoro's swordplay, but through the strength of his will once thoroughly defeated. Though, do you know who didn't see Zoro get defeated? Issue 6. Sanji doesn't see Zoro fight Mihawk. It's a subtle detail in the manga, but Sanji watching Zoro fight Mihawk is vital to his character growth and decision to join the crew. He never had a prayer, he'd rather die than give up, and it's easy, abandon your stupid dream. Sanji is speaking from the point of view of someone who has abandoned his stupid dream to find the All Blue. But seeing Zoro, even after facing what looks like an insurmountable wall that is Mihawk, dedicates himself to never again losing, and Luffy then accepts his impossible dream with a smile. Sanji watches all of this, and it's the catalyst for the end of the Baratie arc, where he brings up his dream with Luffy. Before the Zoro fight, Sanji is resolved. He is resolved to help Zeph fulfill his dream on the Baratie. He doesn't need to find the All Blue, he has given up on his dream. It is only by watching Zoro take his impossible dream head on, get defeated, but regardless soldier on in pursuit of it, only this reignites the spark of Sanji's dream to find the All Blue once again. I'll talk about it later, but One Piece's live action doesn't really do subtlety like that. Speaking of lack of subtlety, Issue 7. Coco Village and Arlong Park is wrong in several places. I was thinking to split this into a few different items, but I'll consolidate it into one here. Amongst all the arc changes, the one that sat the strangest with me, even ignoring all the Garp stuff, which we'll get to later, was Arlong Park. So, in relative rapid fire from least to most important, number 1. Where is my big sea cow? Number 2. Bellemere is a badass. She doesn't wait for Arlong to come to her. She kicks down the door, knocks him to the ground, and sticks a gun in his mouth. It's a shame we missed it. Number 3. The tangerine trees aren't something that the whole village grows. They're specific to her home with Bellemere. Just having them grow everywhere makes it feel less important. This leads on to number 4. Nami hides her accumulated treasure under the tangerine grove, not Bellemere's grave. This is important because it's not Bellemere's body that provides comfort to Nami and gives her strength, it's what she left her, symbolized by the groves of tangerines. Sadly, this can't happen because... Number 5. The village and her sister Nojiko aren't aware of her sacrifice in the live action. Now we're getting into the big stuff. Frankly, I don't know why they made this change, as it wouldn't affect the budget. In the manga, it is always known that Nami's sister is aware of her plan to buy the village, and supports her and helps her hide her treasure in the family grove. It actually relates to her character design too. The reason that Nojiko has her tattoos is to support Nami when she gets the Arlong tattoo. That's bad enough, but the larger, more important reveal is that even though Nami thinks she's fooled the rest of the village, they've merely been pretending to hate her so that at any time she would be able to abandon them without guilt if her burden to save them became too heavy. They trust her enough to put their fate in her hands and love her enough to accept their fate if need be. When Nami's money is taken from her by the corrupt Marines, the village of their own accord decide to face Arlong, knowing that it means certain death, since they refuse to burden Nami any longer and want her to be free. It's all really very impactful, tear-jerking, and an important moment for Nami to know that she has been supported this whole time, that they've seen through her facade of the greedy, thieving crewmate of their oppressor and instead see her for who she truly is, much like a certain rubber boy and his crew. Instead of this subtlety, we get it played completely straight. The village does hate Nami, and her sister hates her too, in absolute contradiction of what Bellemere taught her daughters. Instead of the tough as nails Nami not breaking her facade to protect the village, she breaks down and tells them all. Instead of the village facing Arlong of their own accord, Arlong messes with Coco Village in retaliation. It's all switched, and it's all wrong. Finally, number 6. Riding high on the theme of no subtlety, we get to Nami's room in Arlong Park. Nami's room in the manga is actually pretty nice, at least in a physical sense, albeit absolutely filled with maps. Arlong, by his own admission, says that he buys her nice clothes. Nami's room is not a physical prison, but a mental one. It is a representation of her suffering, having to do something she loves against her will for someone she hates, and also her willpower. She may have been locked in a couple of times to finish a set of maps, but she had never been physically chained there. To add chains to Nami's room is to weaken Nami's resolve as a character. She willingly took on the suffering of working for Arlong to save her village, even as a young girl. Nami may not be the most physically tough member of the Straw Hats, but mentally, she's one of the best. Adding the chains also reduces the exposure of one of Luffy's more subtle traits, his emotional intelligence. In the live action, there's a straightforward line for his reasoning. This is Nami's room, there are chains here. Nami was chained here. This place is bad and must be destroyed. In the manga, it's different. The only indicator of suffering is a pen with blood on it. But when talking to Arlong in this room, this is where, for the first time in this fight, Luffy has gotten legitimately mad. He doesn't goad Arlong into breaking the room as he does in the live action. Instead, he just starts breaking things, starting first and foremost with the desk. Remember, Luffy does not sneak, he is a straightforward guy. He sees a nice room, hears that it's Nami's, hears how Arlong talks about her, sees how Nami has tried her best to bear with her situation to save her village, and thinks, this room is the symbol of Nami's burden, then destroys it first, and then brings the hammer down on Arlong and the rest of the building. Alright, that was all of my issues with Arlong Park. Well, except for the lack of a certain octopus fishman, which I'll get to later. Issue 8. Buggy doesn't want to be Pirate King. This is a minor thing, but an important one to understand Buggy's character. Buggy does not want to be the Pirate King, not at this point of the story anyhow. Rather, we find out later that he's been intentionally keeping a low profile in the East Blue for reasons that I won't spoil. Buggy is treasure hungry, yes, for sure, and he seems to imply that he wants the treasure known as the One Piece, but he does not want the title of Pirate King. So Buggy declaring as such when Luffy says that he will be king of the pirates is a bit of a mischaracterization. Now for the two biggest things I have issue with. Issue 9, Koby has way too much screen time. Helmeppo 2. I think it was an interesting decision to split the story between the start of Luffy's pirate journey and the start of Koby's marine journey. The problem that results from this choice is twofold. First, it robs Koby of some strong characterization early on, as well as Luffy, and it means that that time spent with Koby is not spent with the main crew. In the original manga, Koby has a very tight start to his marine journey. The unwilling cabin boy to Alvida, who gets inspired by Luffy to follow his dream. We see Koby's style of justice when he defies the Marines, assists in the rescue of Zoro, and at one point tells Luffy to destroy the Marines. Koby only then wants to join the Marines when he sees that Morgans was controlling his men with fear and forcing them to do what they did not want to. This tells you something very important about Koby. He's joining the Marines not because of the Marines, but because of what he thinks the Marines do. Protect the innocent and stop evil pirates like Alvida. When he thinks the Marines aren't fulfilling their duty of protecting the innocent, he wants nothing to do with them. Koby, 1,000 chapters later in the manga, is touting that same message. He's not a Marine for the sake of being a Marine, but to save innocent lives. Live-action Koby, not so much. While his levels of evil are turned down a notch in the live-action series, Axe Hand Morgan is still ostensibly in charge of the Marine base once Luffy and Zoro, and I guess Nami too, depart the scene. Koby wouldn't have likely joined under those conditions. He would have, more than likely, left with Luffy once again or found his way to another Marine base to join. The live action tries to rectify this by showing Koby's honesty, which is on brand for him, but that's not strong enough for who Koby is as a character and as an ideal. Koby is someone who demonstrably will put himself in harm's way in order to protect others. It happens in his cover story, which is also removed from the live action. It happens at Marineford. It happens 1,000 chapters later. It wouldn't be enough for manga Koby, even when shaking in fear, to merely go behind a superior officer's back to rat on him. Koby would look them in the eye, tell them what they're doing is wrong, and then probably faint on the spot. We're also robbed of Luffy and Koby's farewell. The two of them depart in an interesting way. Koby, interested in joining the Marines, is asked if he's with Luffy and Zoro, two self-proclaimed pirates. While he grits his teeth and says that he's not with them, an honest choice of words for such a good little egg, when the Marine inquires further, Luffy takes the wheel. Once again showing the depth of his emotional intelligence, he recognizes that Koby won't be able to hide his past, so he brings it up clear as day in a way that provokes Koby into hitting him. He then proceeds to beat up Koby so far that the Marines accept that they can't possibly be friends. In one slick move, Luffy has both laid Koby's past bare so he can't be accused of hiding it in the future, and gotten Koby to show how much he isn't a pirate and rejects his pirate past. When Luffy and Zoro finally depart, Koby thanks them, realizing what Luffy has done, and the rest of the Marines do as well, punishing themselves for saluting a pirate. The Marines at the base are redeemed in the eyes of the reader, and we then don't see Koby again until hundreds of chapters later, excluding the cover story. Well, this isn't the last time that Luffy sees Koby in the live-action series, not even close. They part without Koby's past getting revealed by Luffy to the Marines. Without Luffy beating the snot out of Koby for his own good, we once again don't see Luffy's emotional intelligence, and instead we get Luffy telling Koby to get out of his way in Syrup Village, Koby playing Go with Garp, Koby's past being brought out into the open, and a whole bunch of, ooh, are the Marines actually bad? Is Garp a villain? How will Koby justify this? Ooh! All these plot points are covered much more succinctly in the manga. Koby doesn't need to be turned into the co-main character when the members of the Straw Hat crew are the characters that we want to get to know more. And then there's Garp. Issue 10. Garp is not Garp. As much as I've complained about character moments and specific instances where characters were robbed of subtle yet defining moments, the bulk of live-action One Piece is faithful, at least in spirit, to the original. Except for Garp. Garp is the only character in the live action that is not himself, and as a big Garp fan, it irks me severely. Manga Garp is the loud, jolly, punch first, ask questions later, grin-wearing most she'll be right type vice admiral you'll ever meet. Sure, later on we'll see him conflicted between his duty and his family, but that isn't for a long while later. He is, without a doubt, an older Luffy. He is not the dour, all-business, grumbling figure we see in the live action. When we first see Garp in Koby's cover story in the manga, he gets his chest cut open only to reveal, "Oh whoops, I was asleep, my bad, ha 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 ha." This man is always laughing, always smiling, reveling in Luffy's antics. He doesn't even try to capture Luffy the first time he sees him in the manga, only turning back because the Fleet Admiral told him to. But even then, he's not being serious about it at all. There was one line though, one singular line in the live action that I hated above everything else. It's when Garp is arguing and saying that it is not time for the next generation. What? What? This line is what cemented that Garp was not actually Garp, but some imposter. In some of the latest chapters, we get a flashback which outlines Garp's philosophy, and I'll include it because it's a flashback purely about characterization, not plot. In a guest lecture by Garp at the Marine headquarters, he asked the young Marine recruits about a situation where a baby and an old man, and themselves, need to get off an island, but there's only room for 2 people on the boat. Koby, being a good little bean that he is, answers the correct way. Stay behind and let the old man and the baby take the boat off the island. He'll find another way off. The perfect little answer for someone dedicated to protecting the innocent. Garp thinks otherwise. Wrong, he bellows. Screw the old man, leave him behind, take the baby, and save yourself. The old man has lived his life, but the potential of youth is limitless. It's beautiful, it's succinct, it's hilarious, and he gets reprimanded afterwards for giving such an answer. Garp is not about holding back the next generation, he's all about raising it up. He lives for the next generation. It's never stated explicitly, but you can tell that he has great joy and pride bringing up the next generation of Marines, even if his methods are suspect. Garp was done a huge disservice in the live action, and it's a darn shame. But it raises with me another concern, and my final main issue. The butterfly effect. Changes are necessary in any adaptation, whether plot bending or more surface changes like Usopp not having a long nose. But with a story as long and well crafted as One Piece, almost any change that you make is going to have unintended consequences. Let's start with Hachi, or lack thereof. Hachi is an octopus fishman wielding 6 swords and part of Arlong's crew. Upon the defeat of Arlong, he flees all the way to the Sabaody archipelago, where he plays a very important role in the arc that occurs there, which in turn results in, well, things I won't spoil. But it's not a small change. This event is required to happen for the story to progress. Another purchase of Hachi is facilitating a moment of growth for Nami as she forgives him for what he did as part of Arlong's crew. A third and more important purpose is that Hachi has a tattoo on his forehead. Arlong also has it, but it's a bit more hidden on him. This tattoo of the sun is revealed later on to be how fishermen cover up their marks of slavery, and shows that Hachi was a member of the Fishman Pirates. This same mark of slavery comes up again even later, and is another very important plot point. One Piece live action has already been renewed for another season, and if it maintains its popularity, it will no doubt reach this point, but if it does, what will they do? What will replace the vital plot points left by a Hachi-sized hole? Here's another one. Garp's chase scene with Luffy is airlifted from a later portion of the manga, which is fine in theory. However, that scene in the manga is also used to show off the abilities of a new crew member. Yes, manga readers, that isn't technically correct, but I'm intentionally keeping it a bit vague to avoid spoilers. Now that will have to be replaced by something different. In the Sirat Village arc, the evil Captain Kuro has a first mate called Django, who for some reason doesn't exist in live action. I kind of skipped over the things wrong with Sirat Village, Usopp and the whole arc, but that's mainly because it's a completely different beast than in the manga. I mean, Mary doesn't die in the manga and is a butler, there's a whole pirate invasion plot that is ignored, and the Going Merry isn't a ship in Kaya's shipyard, she doesn't even have a shipyard. It's actually Mary's personal caravel ship that he gives the Straw Hat crew as thanks. If you were to treat the Sirat Village arc as a black box though, aside from some better characterization from Usopp that is missing, the overall journey remains mostly unscathed. Django, however, gets his own cover story in the manga and actually joins the Marines. He then pops up many times as a recognizable face throughout the manga, subordinate to Hina. Hina is arguably more important than Django, but assuming she does appear in the live action at some point, there'll now be a Django-shaped hole beside her. Now, of these changes, the Hachi one is the most important thing that needs to be accounted for in the future, and it's a symptom of potential problems to come. Right now, the cuts are just a runny nose, but the more things that are changed, the more problems will have to be accounted for until the runny nose becomes a disease that needs treatment. With all these issues out of the way, I'm going to address the root cause for all of them before finally wrapping up this video. I'm sorry, I just really love One Piece, so I get really passionate when talking about it. I've mentioned it several times, but here's the root cause for the bulk of the problems. Lack of subtlety. Maybe it's because the writers wanted to appeal to the broadest audience possible, but everything had to be exaggerated, laid out bare with no room for doubt. Nami doesn't just omit that she's a crew member, she states it, not a crew. Her room at Arlong Park isn't a figurative prison, but a literal one with chains. Koby doesn't show his values through his actions, he voices his concerns in a conversation. Sanji's desire to pursue his own dreams isn't reignited by Zoro pursuing an impossible dream, he just vibes with the Straw Hat Gang, I guess? Saw his opportunity to leave and took it? Zoro and Sanji don't actually start arguing and fighting with each other until a bit later in the manga too, but Zoro and Sanji are known to butt heads, so they better start doing it right away. Ironically, I think Luffy actually suffers the most from this. The loudest, most straightforward character of them all. But as I said, Luffy may be a blunt object, but when it comes to reading people, he knows when to swing. His subtlety has pretty much been lost, so that, yeah, while on the top level this version of Luffy is pretty good, the fine details are getting glossed over. That being said, here's the verdict on live-action One Piece. I had low expectations when it came to the live-action adaptation of One Piece, and despite my gripes and the assassination of Garp's character, it was done better than expected. My fellow One Piece fans, the live action was never meant to be a substitute for the manga or the anime, merely an interpretation. Something for audiences ignorant to the anime and manga to use as a gateway to the story proper. No one that already loves One Piece will stop reading due to the live action, and if even one new person decides to read the manga because of the live action, I see that as an absolute win. Heck, watching live action One Piece together with my honey had her expressing that she wanted to watch the whole series. This video, while phrased in the negative, is more to show how much deeper the source material is, how much richer the characterization is, and how much larger than life the people are. How much of a well thought out, tightly woven package Eiichiro Oda's story truly is. One may say that One Piece is, despite still being written, one piece of incredible fiction. So yeah, thank you for joining me. Was there any other glaring issues that I missed? Any other characters that lost a bit of their nuance in their trip to reality? Let me know in the comments down below. This is definitely not my usual content, but I thought I'd try something new. After all, this channel is called We Attempt New Things, and I hope you have a fruitful day.